Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribraja Kacharja Ashto Tarita Srimad Abhay Charana Ravindam Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Sangstapakacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Shrimati Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad-gita Ki Jai. Samveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavad-gita, chapter 6, text number 3. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Got it on the board? 6-3. Arukshor Munir Yogam. Amrukshor Munir Yogam. Karma Karanamuchyate. Karma Karanamuchyate. Yoga Rudasya Tasyaiva. Yoga Rudasya Tasyaiva. Shama Karana Uchyate. Shama Karana Muchyate. Arurakshor Munir Yogam. Karma Karana Muchyate. Yoga Rudasya Tasyaiva. Shama Karana Muchyate. Arurukshur Manur Yogam. Yogam Karma Karana Muchyate. Yoga Rudasya Tasyaiva. Shama Karana Muchyate. Arurukshor Munir Yogam. Karma Karana Muchyate. Yoga Rudasya Tasyaiva. Shama Karana Muchyate. Aruruksha Munir Yoga.
Karma Karana Muchyate.
Karma Karana Muchyate.
Yoga Rudasya Tasyaiva.
Yoga Rudasya Tasyaiva.
Shama Karana Muchyate.
Shama Karana Muchyate. Aruruksha Munir Yoga. Aruksha, who has just begun yoga. Munehe, of the sage. Yogam, the eightfold yoga system. Karma, work. Karanam, the means. Uchyate is said to be. Yoga, eightfold yoga. Arudasya, of one who has attained. Tasya, has. Eva, certainly. Shamaha, cessation of all material activities. Karanam, the means. Uchyate is said to be. Translation. One who is a neophyte in the eightfold yoga system, work is said to be the means. And for one who's already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. Purport. The process of linking oneself with the Supreme is called yoga. It may be compared to a ladder for attaining the topmost spiritual realization. The ladder begins from the lowest material condition of the living entity and then rises up to perfect self-realization in pure spiritual life. According to various elevations, different parts of the ladder are known by different names. But all in all, the complete ladder is called yoga and may be divided into three parts, namely Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. The beginning of the ladder is called the Yoga Rurukshu stage, and the highest rung is called Yoga Rudha. Concerning the eightfold yoga system, attempts in the beginning to enter into meditation through regulated principles of life and practice of different sitting postures, which are more or less bodily exercises, are considered fruitive material activities. All such activities lead to achieving mental equilibrium to control the senses. When one is accomplished in the practice of meditation, he ceases all disturbing mental activities. A Krishna conscious person, however, is situated from the beginning on the platform of meditation because he always thinks of Krishna. And being constantly engaged in the service of Krishna, he is considered to have ceased all material activities. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunaditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bhangum Langayate Gadim Yat Kripa Tadaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinatananam Paramanandamadavam Sri Chaitanyeswaram. So, in this verse, Krishna is explaining to Arjuna the stages of yoga. Yoga means to link up with the Supreme. This is the purpose of yoga. Modern day idea, people practice yoga, they think because they'll be able to lose weight or improve their health, right? But this is not the purpose of yoga. Yoga is so that one's consciousness becomes fixed on the Supreme Lord. This is the purpose of yoga. In the beginning, when the mind is not controlled, it thinks of many different things. The mind goes here and there. In this chapter, Krishna is explaining to Arjuna how to control the mind. And in the beginning, one performs bodily exercises and breathing exercises, not popularly known as Hatha Yoga, but it's all to bring the mind under control. The mind out of control causes so many disturbances. Just like you may be performing your daily activities and someone comes and disturbs your mind. Has anyone here had that experience? Somebody comes and disturbs your mind? Like you're walking down the street and there's a small passage and you're walking and someone else is walking, they also want to walk, and they might say, "Tera baap ka rasta hai?" Immediately disturbed, mind becomes disturbed, right? So, yoga means to control the mind. And in the beginning, there are practices that one can perform to calm the mind down, like breathing exercises and bodily exercises. And these are the beginning stages of yoga. It's not the goal of yoga, it's beginning stages. And the word used here for the beginning stages is the advanced stage is yoga rudha. It's referred to in the verse as Aru Rakshur Munir. Beginning stages. So there's different levels of yoga. In the beginning, you have to do work, perform various exercises, etc., to calm the mind down. The beginning stage, doing activities. And for the beginner, this verse, Krishna says in this verse, activities, karma is the means. But for an advanced yogi, right, the means is a cessation of all activities, material activities. So the point is that in Krishna consciousness, one automatically comes to the platform of giving up material activities, because the activities that the devotees perform are in relationship to Krishna. Just like everyone needs to eat. You need to eat something to maintain the body. So people work, acquire some money, and buy food. Right? And then they eat. But in Krishna consciousness, there's one more step. The devotee may work, acquire money, buy food, but they offer that food to Krishna. And when they offer the food to Krishna, and they're eating that food, they're thinking of Krishna. This is Krishna Prashadam. It's not ordinary rice, dal, and sabji, but it's the Lord's mercy. And in that way, they become advanced in devotion, in yoga, simply by their work. The ordinary yogi becomes gradually advanced by by performing activities to control the mind, bodily exercises, and then gradually he gives up those bodily exercises and fixes the mind on the Supreme. In the Bhagavatam, the Supreme Lord has 3 different phases of realization. Parameti, Bhagavaniti, Jnanati, Bhagavaniti, Sabhyate. That the Lord has his all-pervading feature that's known as Brahman. And he has his localized aspect, which is known as the Paramatma. And he has his personal aspect, which is known as the Bhagavan. So just like the sun shine stretches everywhere, and that's compared to the Brahman feature of the Lord. And if you go to the sun globe, that is compared to the Paramatma feature of the Lord. But the controlling deity of the sun, the sun god, Surya, is a person controlling the sun and the sun's energy, that is considered the personal or Bhagavan feature of the Supreme Lord. So God has his different aspects. And by following the process of Gyan Yoga, one can understand the Brahman feature of the Lord. By following the Karma Yoga process, which is being described here, in the sense that performing, controlling the mind, one can understand the Paramatma feature of the Lord. But performing activities for the pleasure of the Lord is known as bhakti, bhakti yoga, and by this process one can understand the personal features of the Supreme Lord. Just like Arjuna was qualified to understand the knowledge of this Bhagavad-gita. Why? Because Krishna says he was a devotee. You're my devotee as well as my friend. Therefore, you can understand this knowledge of Bhagavad-gita. The qualification for understanding Bhagavad-gita is not PhD or MA. This will not help us to understand Bhagavad-gita. One can understand the message of Krishna by becoming a devotee of Krishna. And how does one become a devotee of Krishna? Well, this yoga process is there, but it's a very lengthy thing, and it's not easy to do in Kali Yuga. This 6th chapter of Bhagavad-gita, the process of Dhyan yoga, meditational yoga. It's not easy to perform. But in Kali Yuga, the Supreme Lord has made a very simple process. Simple process for Kali Yuga. And what is that process? Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, 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 Gatiranyatha. By the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, one can very easily come to the position of the highest yogi. The cessation of material activities, the yoga rudhasya, the advanced devotee, you can come to that stage very easily by performing the Nava Bhakti, the 9 processes of devotional service, beginning with Shravanam, Kirtanam, and Smaranam, Vishnu Smaranam. Hearing about Krishna, chanting Krishna's name, and remembering Krishna. Srila Prabhupada has made this temple so that people get an opportunity to perform bhakti. Many people come for seeing the deity, but they're not interested to hear. Right? Prabhupada said, with only coming to see the deity and without hearing the glories of the deity, it's simply an eye exercise. They're doing eye exercise. But what they're seeing, they have no idea. Who is Krishna? How is Krishna great? What is Krishna's message? Right? For that, no one's interested. They're ready to come to the temple, stand before the deity, and ask for, help me marry my daughter, help me pass the test, make my business grow. And that's okay. You can approach Krishna for all those things, right? It's pious, but it's not bhakti. In this way, you can never know Krishna. You can never become like Arjuna, Krishna's devotee. Arjuna, he wasn't living in the temple. No. He was a Kshatriya, military man. His business was to fight, to kill people. Expert at killing. Maharati. There was Rati, Atirati, Maharati. So, some warriors are so expert, they can fight with 100 men. Atirati. But Maharati, that they can fight with unlimited other soldiers. And Arjuna was such a warrior, Maharati. But he was a devotee because whatever he did for the pleasure of Krishna. So it doesn't matter what you do. If you do it for Krishna, it becomes yoga. Whatever it may be. Dovetail our propensities in the service of Krishna so that we can fix our mind on Krishna. The mind is a source of disturbance because the mind is fixed on sense gratification. The mind is proposing that by enjoying the senses, I will be happy. But this is a mistaken idea. No one becomes happy by sense gratification. It's actually a source of suffering, right? Just like eating, right? One gets a nice rasgulla and eats one, oh, very nice, eats two. But then if you try to eat 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, what's going to happen? Pet garbage ho jata hai. So sense gratification is not a source of happiness. Happiness is available in this material world according to our previous activities, what we have performed in our last life. Right? If we've done pious works in our last life, in this life we'll get some happiness. And for the impious acts that we've performed in our previous life, we'll experience unhappiness. So that's already fixed. One in this material world thinks that if I work very hard, I will get more happiness and less unhappiness if I work hard. If I make money, sabse badiya rupya. But that's not the fact. Try to understand things according to Shastra. Shastra says, as much happiness as you're going to get in this life is already fixed. You don't have to search it out. It's going to come to you. Just like nobody's looking for unhappiness in this material world. Does anybody here want unhappiness? If you want unhappiness, raise your hand. Nobody wants, but does it come? Yes, it comes. We don't want, but it comes. Why? Because of our previous activities. In the same way, happiness will also come by our previous activities. So, the intelligent person, and what Lord Krishna is suggesting, is that one should perform yoga. One should not waste one's time chasing after the illusory idea that if I work hard, I'll get more happiness. It doesn't work like that. But rather, one should use this rare human form of life to understand our relationship with God. God is there in all of our hearts. Sarvasya chaham ridi sanivisto matas mritir jnanam apoanam cha. Krishna says, I am residing in everyone's heart, and I give knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. Our relationship with Krishna is always there, but we have forgotten that relationship, and now we have relationship with so many things in this material world. I'm from this country, I'm from this family, I'm from this community. So many different relationships, but they're all temporary. They're not going to last. In this life, you may be Gujarati Samaj, but in next life, what Samaj you'll be? You can be born in Russia or Lower Slobovia, wherever that is. And then what Samaj you'll be in? Ekine. So this world is always changing. It's always changing. And if we don't utilize the rare form, the rare opportunity of this human form to reestablish our relationship with the Supreme Lord, then we have wasted this human form of life. It's a great opportunity. It's a great chance to again reestablish our lost relationship with the Supreme Lord. The mission of Lord Chaitanya is that everyone in this world should become happy. Happiness in this material world through sense gratification is not possible. It doesn't last. Real happiness comes in developing a relationship with the Supreme Lord, and that can easily be established, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains, by performance of yajna. And that yajna is the Sankirtan yajna. Right? Everyone is performing some kind of sacrifice. You're sacrificing your time, you're sacrificing your efforts, but for what? For sense gratification. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining that rather we should perform sacrifice, yajna, for the pleasure of Krishna. And the way to please Krishna, specifically in this age, is by the performance of Sankirtan Yajna, the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. Yoginam apisarvesham yad gatinatmanaha. The highest yogi is one who's meditating on Krishna. This is the highest yogi. People don't know what is the purpose of yoga. They're confused. Yoga is not meant to cure your diabetes. Yoga is meant to become a devotee of Krishna. It's called Bhakti Yoga, the highest yoga. Different, here it's described, different rungs of the ladder, right? You start at the lower rung and you slowly go up the ladder. But what is the highest point of the ladder of yoga is to become a devotee of the Lord, is to become a devotee of Krishna. And that's what Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gita, Yoginam apisarvesham. Of all the yogis, the highest yogi is one who's always meditating on Krishna. So how can we always meditate on Krishna? Well, the easiest way is to have association with the devotees of Krishna. If we associate with the devotees of Krishna, then gradually we will always be able to think of Krishna. Shastra says that no one entered into the spiritual world without getting the mercy of a devotee of the Lord. If we see in Srimad Bhagavatam, everyone who got the mercy got it by association with a devotee. Dhruva Maharaj, who did he meet? He was looking for God. Who did he meet? Narad Muni. Prahlad Maharaj, Narad Muni. So in the same way, if we want to become to the perfection of this human form of life, the highest stage of yoga, we need to associate with the devotee of the Lord. How do we know who's a devotee? One can understand who's a devotee by their their speeches, their talking. Because a devotee talks about Krishna. It's not by looking. Right? You can't know a devotee by seeing. You have to know a devotee by hearing. Who is a devotee? Because a devotee will talk about Krishna. A devotee will talk about the glories of Krishna, talk about Krishna's qualities. This is a devotee. So the International Society for Krishna Consciousness was specifically formed so that people could have association and the opportunity to hear about Krishna, to hear about the message of Krishna from Srimad Bhagavad-gita, and to also hear the pastimes of Krishna and Krishna's devotees from Srimad Bhagavatam. This movement is a spiritual movement. Spiritual because it's based on the instructions of Krishna and Bhagavad-gita, and it further develops those instructions in the chapters and the different cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam to bring one to the platform of being a devotee of the Lord. When we reestablish our relationship with Krishna, when we think of Krishna, then we can actually become happy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains Anandam Buddhivardhanam, that the happiness that is there in the relationship with God, with Krishna, is like an ocean of happiness. And there may be some happiness in this material world, but it's fleeting happiness. It's not real happiness. It's illusory happiness. So we request everyone to regularly visit the temple, to regularly hear the classes that are daily going on. Every night there's Bhagavad-gita class. Every morning there's Srimad Bhagavatam class. And by hearing these classes, gradually one can come to the highest platform of yoga, by becoming a devotee of Krishna. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions?
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, in this sloka, Lord Sri Krishna says that those who are advanced yogi, they should give up the work. So if they give up all the work, then what will they do?
When the mind is disturbed in this yoga process, bodily exercises, breathing, analoma, niloma, pranayama, it calms down the mind. So one should practice these things. But when the mind actually becomes fixed in yoga, in meditation on the Supreme Lord, then one needed perform these things. Can stop these things. So that's this process. But in Bhakti Yoga, immediately activities are also in relationship to Krishna. Cooking for Krishna, cleaning for Krishna, selling books about Krishna. So the mind automatically is engaged in Krishna, the highest meditation. It's not that the meditation is something void or impersonal. Even the yogis, they're also meditating in the highest stage on the Paramatma within the heart. The Lord is within everyone's heart. He's there in his four-armed form. It's explained that he's about as big as a thumb. He's there in your heart. So the yogi meditates. But a devotee of the Lord can quickly come to that stage by engaging in activities in relationship to Krishna. Like when the devotees go out and they perform Harinam Sankirtan, they get realization that the Lord is in my heart and the Lord is in everyone's heart. By that Harinam Sankirtan, they're hearing the holy name of the Lord and they're becoming purified. In that way, I am performing devotional service. However, in the yoga process, performing exercises and breathing exercises to calm down the mind so that the mind can be fixed on the Lord of the heart. Bhakti Yoga goes one step beyond that. We understand the Lord is in our heart, but we want to serve the Lord. We want to do something for the pleasure of the Lord. Not just meditate, but practical engagement in bringing pleasure to the Lord. Cooking, so many dressing, so many activities the devotee can do in relationship with the Lord. So that's why Bhakti Yoga is the highest, because it's very quick. This process mentioned takes time, long time. And in Kali Yuga, you'll see all the different verses. They describe what you require. A holy place, a quiet place. Here we're in the temple, but it's not quiet. So many people are chatting, right? Where in Bombay are you going to find a quiet place? Tell me. Is there such a place in Bombay, quiet place? Not too high, not too low. So these prescriptions are difficult to get together to progress in this path. But in Bhakti Yoga, you can very quickly make progress by chanting and rendering service to the Supreme Lord under the guidance of his devotee. When the Lord sees that we're performing activities according to the instruction of his devotee, then he becomes very pleased. He becomes very merciful and allows us to make advancement in devotional service. Otherwise, on our own, it's very difficult. Yes.
Krishna, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much for your beautiful class. In the middle of a lecture, you mentioned that our happiness and distress in this life is fixed. And you also mentioned that sense gratification is the cause of distress. You gave the example of rasgullas. So, how we can understand this? Because happiness in this material world is sense gratification only. And you mentioned that sense gratification is the cause of distress. So how to understand these two things?
Well, it's not very difficult to understand. You will get some happiness in this material world, but it's limited. It's limited by the activities you performed in your previous life. Just like someone gets married, okay? So it's not that there's not some happiness in married life, although sometimes we think that there's no happiness in married life, but there's some happiness, right? But it's not unlimited happiness, and there's so much struggle that goes along with it, right? So many problems. We are already struggling with our mind and our senses. And when there's attraction between the opposite sex and they unite in sex, then that attraction becomes very strong. And then, besides your own mind and senses, there's another mind and senses that you have to deal with. So it becomes even more complicated. So, regardless of the situation, a devotee, Krishna is giving the knowledge that besides this limited happiness in the material world, there's a spiritual happiness that's available, and it's coming from the spiritual world. And that happiness descends in this Kali Yuga in the form of Krishna's holy name. So by chanting the holy name of Krishna, one can derive not only happiness, but unlimited happiness, spiritual happiness, because the holy name is spiritual. It's not material. Is that okay?
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु। ध्यान योग यहाँ पे चल रहा है अभी, ध्यान योग। तो इससे पहले अर्जुन कोई ऐसा प्रश्न पूछे नहीं कि मुझे ध्यान के बारे में कुछ बताइए, और सुनने के बाद भी अर्जुन जो है रिजेक्ट कर देते हैं कि मुझे अब ये मन जो है ऐसा मेरे लिए व्यवहारिक नहीं है, कुछ दूसरा बताइए। तो यहाँ भगवान शुरू में ही ध्यान योग से भगवान शुरू करते हैं, तो ऐसा यहाँ से उपदेश शुरू ऐसा क्यों करते हैं?
Krishna is explaining about karma. Krishna is explaining about knowledge, what karma is, what knowledge is. And yes, in this chapter he's explaining how to fix the mind on something higher. Higher than mundane knowledge, higher than activities, is fixing the mind on the Supreme. So he gives here processes how to fix the mind on the Supreme. And in this particular yoga process of exercises, pranayam, to calm the mind, to fix on the Supreme. Now what does Arjuna say at the end of this chapter? He says, my dear Lord, trying to control the mind seems as difficult as trying to control the wind. If a tufan, or a hurricane, they say in America, comes, can you control that? Big hurricane comes rolling through here. Can we stop it? Can we control it? No. In the same way, Arjuna is saying, trying to control the mind is like trying to control the wind. You know, the wind can be a very powerful thing. Sometimes it gets up to, in a hurricane, several hundred miles an hour. The wind can blow down trees, right? But what does Krishna say to Arjuna? He said, yes, trying to control the mind is undoubtedly difficult, but you can do it by practice and detachment. So what is that practice? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. And what is that detachment? The detachment is the 4 regulated principles of freedom. No illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication, and no meat eating. Meat, fish, or eggs. You perform these, you avoid these things, and you perform this thing. Yama, niyama. 1 to do, positive. 1 to not do, negative. And you can come to the stage. The highest gyan, the highest karma, and the highest yoga. Devotional service to Krishna. Okay?
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, you were mentioning about the yogis. They fix their mind on the Paramatma. So like how one is Ashtanga yoga process is mentioned. So like that initially how they fix, like it seems like wide initially because everybody may not be having that realization, like localized aspect of the Lord Paramatma. So how they are like fixing their mind, or after some realization they get and then they
At
focus
some
on
point
person.
when they calm down the agitation of the mind and the senses, then in this process of yoga, meditational yoga, they can see the Lord in the heart. The Lord is there residing within in the heart. He has his form as the Paramatma, so they can see that. And they're very absorbed in that. Just like Lord Shiva, he's sitting down in meditation, but he's meditating on Ananta, the form of the Lord. He's not meditating on something impersonal or void, but the form of the Lord. So yoga is meant to calm down our senses and calm down our mind so that we can fix our mind on the Lord. In this age, that process is very difficult to do. Therefore, the Lord has given us an easy process, and that is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram. Srila Prabhupada has given us this Maha Mantra. He said, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. If we follow that instruction, we can be happy. Chant Hare Krishna. How much time does it take to chant one mala? 7 minutes, 10 minutes. Right? So if we take the time to chant the holy name of Krishna, we'll get the result, the same result that these yogis get after so many years of practicing exercises and breathing. You can get very quickly by chanting Hare Krishna. If you have to go up so many steps, you can take the stairs or you can go by the lift. This process of meditational yoga is like going up the steps or climbing up a ladder. But by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, it's like taking the lift. Very quickly you can make progress by chanting Hare Krishna. So how many here are going to start chanting Hare Krishna? Raise your hand. Couple of hands. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatsiti siddhaye yatatam apisiddhanam kaschin mamviti tatvata. So anyway, we request you, please chant this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and come to the perfection of yoga, that is Bhakti Yoga. Hare Krishna. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, thank you very much for listening. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi.